Another member of her party, as a state representative, she's a state representative, spoke out against this bill. Another member of her party called ICE on her facility. Yeah, it's insane. This is just a liberal. No.
Of course, if anyone's harassing Jews on campus.
How this rabbi's argument actually hurts Jews? Steven Crowder. Oh my God. Schumer breaks news to Booker on the Senate floor. The Republicans are planning to sidestep parliamentarian on current policy. They don't care anymore about norms, about rules, and even about going nuclear, he says. Booker says it's further breaking of the Senate. Next time around, there's no going back now. Wow, that's crazy. I don't know if this is what you meant with right-wing infighting. Bro, it's so sad. This motherfucker's got 2,000 views in 34 minutes. Let's see.
That's completely impermissible, just as harassing any other student, too. I'm with you. But as it relates to government institutions and then public figures, that is an anti-American view.
Idaho Republican state rep dared to speak out against Trump, then ICE raided them. Wait, what? Stephanie Mickelson was falsely reported to ICE by local Republican Party. 3 days later, her farm was raided. What's worse? It worked. The next debate, I remained silent. I didn't speak up because I didn't want to put a target on my family's back, she said, admitting that weaponizing ICE to intimidate her had actually worked. I did change the way I did things. What is this?
Investigate West. Dropped a...
And I think a lot of it has to do with I've been one of the few that have stood up to the far right extremism.
And because of that, Republican Representative Stephanie Mickelson believes she's had a pretty big target on her back the last several years. We've talked about this before, when Representative Mickelson was censured and then told she could no longer run as a Republican by her local legislative GOP committee. That leadership has since been replaced. But last week, we learned how big that target actually is. Daniel Walters of Investigate West dropped a story of how far-right Republican activists have tried to weaponize a federal agency against those who don't agree with the new administration's approach to immigration enforcement. Specifically, how a ranking member of the Ada County Republican Central Committee targeted Representative Mickelson with threats of raids by ICE. Well, that raid happened back in January. Mickelson, who owns several food production and seed potato companies in southeastern Idaho, says immigration enforcement isn't really her biggest concern about this. It's more about the culture of politics these days and how intimidation tactics like this could impact anyone's effect as a legislator.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me.
For many people,
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
The second inauguration of Donald Trump
Solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute.
Was a turning point.
Faithfully execute.
For Idaho Representative Stephanie Mickelson,
They showed up at our business, days later.
that point came later that week.
He started targeting me on Tuesday, and they were there by Friday.
Representative Mickelson is referring to a January 21st social media post by Ada County GOP Vice Chairman Ryan Spoon, in which he asked the Deputy Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement if he could please send some illegal...
Wait, it's another Republican? Hey, yo, these people are fucking crazy, bro. It's Republicans doing it to one another. Oh my God, bro. It like not even a random guy. Like actually a Republican in a position of power, like a party representative. Like I thought, yes, they said it like 12 times. No, I thought it was just like random Nazis online. Not the Republican in her own district.
Immigration raids to the businesses owned by Idaho State Representative Stephanie Mickelson. She's been bragging about how many illegals her businesses employ. Representative Mickelson says,
So I was actually home that Friday.
It was an off day during the early legislative session when ICE showed up at one of her eastern Idaho farms.
And then when they couldn't get a hold of me, then they start texting 911, Mom, which means I have to call.
Not coincidence?
I don't think it was coincidence, but, could have been, but I doubt it.
Yeah, they keep pointing to something you said during last session, though.
So what it was is we were having a discussion, and it was a Texas force style bill, which was already tied up in the courts.
This right here is another key component to us protecting and defending the people of Idaho, and that is protecting the very borders of our state.
So on this particular case, and I feel like this has been happening a lot lately, is we target a certain ethnicity or a certain group, and we want to...
Bro, this is why it's so funny when people go, nah, this won't be an issue for me. She's a Republican state representative with not one, but multiple farms. A rich white lady who is in the Republican Party. You're so stupid. Be for real if you think it's not going to actually hurt you. These people, herself included, don't even give a fuck about you. You don't have any money. You have no motion and you have no biz. Okay? You're going to die alone. And you're never going to be able to retire. You think these elites give a shit about you? They don't even care about one another. And you're like, no, dude, no, this won't happen to me. Due process violated. Who cares? It's fine that the ICE is, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement is basically the personal Gestapo force of the most right-wing person. that you've ever encountered at any given moment. You're cooked, dog. You're cooked.
Demonize them.
For debate on motion, Late 32.
It was during the House debate on last session's immigration enforcement bill.
I think you need to remember that every food processor, probably in the state, from the large food processors to the small ones.
But I stood up and I said, I think we need to be really thoughtful before we're passing some of these bills because I think they have unintended consequences.
So if you guys think that you haven't been touched by an illegal immigrant's hands in some way through either your traveling or your food, you're kidding yourselves.
So because of that, then they claimed that I had admitted to something which I had never admitted to.
Which is likely what Spoon referenced on January 23rd of this year, calling Mickelson a, quote, plantation mistress, and said, we're going to take your farm slaves away. However, Spoon told Investigate West, quote, her own testimony drew attention to herself.
And the fallacy in all this, every employer out there has to follow the law. But the law is very narrow as far as what we can get, what we can ask, and what we can do. If we don't follow those laws, and if we were knowingly hiring undocumented workers or illegals, you can get a fine of up to $27,000 per employee.
For Representative Mickelson, her biggest worry isn't necessarily her family business,
Double checked.
but the chilling effect this had on her ability to do her other job, like when a similar immigration bill came back this session. When this came around for you to stand up and speak your mind on a topic like this, did that change?
This year, I didn't stand up and talk about it.
Why not?
I felt like that I didn't need to make myself and my family and our businesses a bigger target than it needed to be. And so I simply stayed quiet on the issue.
So you've had to change the way you do things?
I did have to change the way I did things, and I had a lot of sleepless nights where I said to myself, if I can't be effective anymore, then maybe it is time, then maybe I need to not be here. I need to do something differently. Or my choice was, I'm going to have to.
Republicans will ignore the Senate parliamentarian. I know. We covered it earlier. Shocking, guys. Shocking.
To stand up and find my voice again. And so I finally decided that I'm going to do the best I can do while I'm here. I represent my community. I represent my constituents. I represent the people of Idaho. And if we lose good statesmen in this body, then where will we be?
Is this a bigger problem in this building or in this realm of politics where people feel like they can't say something because they'll get a target on their backs?
I think you're seeing more and more of that, especially in the last couple of years with the rise of social media and confrontational politics. You see this situation where people really think about whether or not they're ever going to make a public statement. Part of the problem with these extremist groups is they've come in, a lot of them have come in from another state, and we welcome out-of-staters to come in and move into Idaho, but to come in and then tell us that they know the Idaho way. The Idaho way is when we have a problem, we roll up our sleeves and we work together and we help our neighbors, or we have differences, but we sit at the table and hammer through what's the best solution for Idaho. But I think until some of us start standing up and saying this is enough. If you want to have a conversation, that's great. Let's not be an...
They sound nervous. Am I just projecting? No, it's double speed. I think that's part of the reason. But also, yeah, of course she's nervous. Another member of her party, as a state representative, she's a state representative, spoke out against this bill. Another member of her party called ICE on her facility. Yeah, it's insane. This is just a liberal. No, she's not a liberal. Dude, no, she is a Republican. She is a Republican state rep. Hello, she is a Republican state rep. Called ICE, look like an ex-post. Dog, if you post on Twitter and you demand that ICE go to her facilities, and then ICE goes to her facilities, you just called ICE. You don't have to dial them up. That's what you did. That's what happened.
Anarchist or an arsonist, let's be an architect. Let's find a good future for Idaho.
Well, according to Investigate West's story, after that January raid of Mickelson Farms, one employee was arrested by ICE and sent to a detention center in Las Vegas. Both she and her family say they would never knowingly employ an undocumented worker, and they follow all federal and state laws.
Yeah, knowingly. Yeah, of course they do. Of course. That's why she doesn't want ICE to round up all of her workers. That's what it is. That's the real reason. It's not like she even cares about the humanity of these people. Maybe she does to a certain degree. It's so funny that chatters looked at a Republican from Idaho, a place where liberalism does not exist in theory or in praxis, sorry. And you went, oh, she thinks like brown people are human. She must be a libtard. No, she's just a Republican who has a disagreement. One disagreement. That's all it took for another Republican to sick ICE on her. What the? If you think a federal government that is willing to do this will, to a wealthy Republican, multiple farm owning a state representative, if they think that they won't do that to you, you are stupid.
To be in compliance. By the way, Mickelson did vote in favor of that immigration bill last session, despite the debate. And this ICE episode,
and it worked. It worked. She voted in favor of it. I'm an actual leftist in Idaho. There are dozens of us here. Dozens. How else am I going to get away? How? I need to get out all my anti-Semitism. So I call my Jewish lawyer and yell at him so that I don't do it in public, chat. That's how it works. Okay? Yeah. Felix moved and Alex lives in New York, so I have to call him. And because he's my lawyer, attorney-client privilege, it's confidential. So all my anti-Semitism to my Jewish lawyer is confidential. The state can't use it. Anyway, wait, hold on. Oh, before we move away from this, there's two things I wanted to show you. I'm sorry. I forgot. Number one, Tarlov, does anyone have the clip of this? Because I want to show you how fucking disgusting this little cretin is. Here is Jessica Tarlov talking about the Venezuelan hairstylist / makeup artist, the gay one that was deported. Okay?
Every day. And I'm going to...
You are probably... I was about to say you are probably not going to believe what Jesse Waters has to say, but honestly, I spent 2 hours pulling up clips to prove that you weren't anti-Semitic or racist because of those clip chimps, bro. Yeah, I ruined it. I spent years on this. Ethan Klein be like, I spent months compiling all of the Redditors' posts to make an argument that this man is anti-Semitic, and he just came out and said it. It's over. All that work, years of work, and he just tweeted it out. Why do we have to prove this shit is clear as day? Dude is an anti-Semitic. I mean, I think there are varying degrees of people who have information on this process. Like there's some who are in the margins who might be convinced that I am anti-Semitic with clips out of context. And then there is a ginormous number of people who are out there who just will say it even though they don't believe it themselves. They don't really care about the truth. If you find someone who is in the first camp, then yeah, it's valid to try to explain to them what the truth is.
To continue, because getting an assurance from the El Salvadorian government that they're not going to torture anyone who they haven't confirmed is a gang member is not the same as not putting these people on the flight in the first place. And there was an interesting back and forth with Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, and Andrew Feinberg earlier this afternoon, because Andrew Feinberg was trying to talk to her about this new guidance that shows that you need 8 points. Then there are a bunch of different ways that you can qualify for points to prove that you are a TDA member. And you can get 8 points alone for a tattoo that they say is a gang tattoo. And we now know of 2 separate cases of people who have tattoos that met that criteria, but it was just for one of them a crown that said mom above it, and another one, another crown tattoo. So that's obviously something they're looking for, but it turns out that that guy had a crown tattoo because he got matching tattoos with his ex-girlfriend, and they had done that. So those people have been sent to this El Salvadorian prison camp.
Do not get matching tattoos with your
I
girlfriend.
agree.
Parents everywhere
I'm
are taking
not
notes.
very pro-ink, but you can't take away people's due process like that. And I don't trust the El Salvadorian government to be making sure that they are not torturing people, that they're vetting them properly. They need to be vetted on this side.
Why do the Democrats always say this could happen?
It did happen. It's not.
Yeah, what do you mean this could happen? She's giving examples of what has happened thus far.
It didn't
They're
happen.
torturing them? Did you watch the video?
Yeah. Did you?
Yes. Unironically is a torture slave labor prison. That's what it is. Human rights groups have been criticizing CCOT since its inception. Yes, it is happening. Yes.
Did you read the Time magazine? Time magazine was there when the gay barber from Venezuela who had a crown tattoo that said mom was being processed coming into the El Salvadorian. Oh, am I boring you again? I'm sorry.
No, but you've been talking about this gay barber from El Salvador with some stupid tattoo for weeks. Weeks, Jessica.
Come on.
That's a person, man. That's a human being with a life, with friends, with loved ones, with family. And now all of that has been stripped away from him for no reason, literally no reason whatsoever. And the way in which that was stripped away from him was also illegal. He wasn't. The actions of the government is. And he's like, oh, come on. I want to jerk off over the thought of brown people being rounded up, and you're ruining it for me by constantly yapping in my ear about how a lot of these people are innocent.
It's just a gay barber.
He's not into you.
He's an innocent guy who got swept up in a deportation, and hopefully we get it figured out and straightened out. But a lot of people in this country, Jessica, get arrested for things that they didn't do, get falsely accused, falsely convicted.
I'm also against racial profiling.
Yeah, Lemon Towel is correct. Imagine if someone told Jesse Waters, man, shut up about Lake and Riley. You talked about her for an entire fucking year, you know? Like, if someone had said that, these people would go to that person's house and kill them, okay? They would assassinate. They would assassinate that person. There would be round-the-clock coverage over the horrific monster that said this thing. And eventually, someone would do a lone wolf-style assassination, stochastic terrorism.
That doesn't mean used falsely convicted.
I'm also against racial profiling.
That doesn't mean you just stop arresting people. That doesn't mean you stop arresting.
Yeah, that's not the argument, you fucking asshole. That's not the argument at all. No one is saying, no more arrests, please. Innocent people get arrested sometimes. No. She's saying, once an arrest has taken place, there has to be a mechanism to make sure that this person is innocent or guilty. Otherwise, everyone can be arrested and everyone can be shipped off to the fucking slave camp.
Criminals because one guy was arrested who was innocent. It just means you just try to do it better the next time. And I have nothing against the gay barbers. Gay barbers usually give the best haircuts. So we should bring them back just for that.
Anyway, with the administrative error, the Maryland man that was sent to El Salvador prison, J.D. Vance also got in on it. Here's what kickstarted the process. Vance here, mocking John Favreau for not reading the court filing, says the deported man was a convicted gang member. The court filing does not say that. It says he was denied bond in 2019 over an informant's claim that he was in MS-13. That is not a conviction. J.D. Vance, John Favreau says, any comment on this? Marco Rubio, how about you? You just admitted to accidentally sending an innocent father from Maryland to a torture prison, right? And he wrote that and said, my comment is that according to the court document you apparently didn't read, he was a convicted MS-13 gang member with no legal right to be here. My further comment is that it's gross to get fired up about gang members getting deported while ignoring citizens they victimize. Okay? And then and the actual fucking court filing does not show what he claims it shows. Kyle Cheney responds, senior legal affairs reporter for Politico, says Vance here, mocking John Favreau for not reading the court filing, says the deported man was a convicted gang member. The court filing does not say that. It says he was denied bond in 2019 over an informant's claim that he was in MS-13. That is not a conviction. The issue is not whether Abrego Garcia was removable. It's that the court agreed he shouldn't be sent to El Salvador. The administration has scoffed at the notion there have been errors in March 15 flight determinations. But here they acknowledge one. Now, of course, considering that this administration also moved forward with the Lake and Riley Act, something that people must understand is that they don't care. They don't fucking care because someone else claiming that they're fucking MS-13 is all it takes. Someone suspecting you of doing a crime is all it takes for you to be deported. Here's how the Republicans are defending it. Let's tell the story of Kilmer Armado Abrego Garcia, the Maryland father. Reed, likely member of MS-13. No, he's not. Who was removed to El Salvador and who the Atlantic and apparently the entire political left are demanding be returned to the United States. First, his detention. He was detained in March 2019 and charged with removability. Abrego Garcia is a native and a citizen of El Salvador. He crossed the border illegally in 2012 and thus was removable totally independently of whether he was an MS-13. The finding that he was a member of MS-13 only came up because he asked for bond. The immigration judge reviewed the evidence and found that it showed he is a verified member of MS-13. It did not. And therefore, that Abrego Garcia did not demonstrate that his release from custody would not pose a danger to others. The immigration judge also found that Abrego Garcia was a flight risk, noting his only history of failing to appear in the proceedings pertaining to his traffic violations. Thus, on 2 independent grounds, the judge denied his bond. Abrego Garcia appealed the Board of Immigration Appeals, which affirmed the immigration judge's finding on the dangerousness, thus dismissed the appeal. Fast forward 6 months with a new tactic. Instead of challenging the finding of removability, Abrego Garcia filed a new claim, 1 for asylum, 2 for withholding of removal from El Salvador, and 3, protection under Article 3 of the Convention Against Torture. And what happened after that? We have to remember the situation Abrego Garcia is in. He's facing imminent removal given the ruling of his first immigration judge. I like that he only posts positively about judicial decisions that he agrees with, but not ones that he disagrees with, where he just makes up excuses. Yeah. Please pay no attention to the judges that looked through all of this information and still decided that he should not be deported. What does that say about the previous decisions that were made? Perhaps it maintains the position that the previous decisions that were made were erroneous, which is precisely the fucking reason why the goddamn Department of Homeland Security openly admitted that they made an administrative mistake. They openly admit it. These guys are outflanking the DHS by saying, oh, well, the one time someone claimed he was MS-13, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. Don't look at anything else. Yeah. At his hearing applying for asylum, he testified as he fears return to El Salvador because the 18th Street Gang was targeting him and threatening him with death because of his family's pupusa business. He argued that the gang was extorting his mother, which is a common practice for MS-13, by the way, which is such a common practice for MS-13 that the American fucking federal immigration judge also was like, yeah, that makes sense. A fact that gave him protection from deportation in this country until ICE black-bagged him and kidnapped him and sent him to El Salvador anyway, which is ironic because then the Department of Homeland Security turned around and said, yeah, guess what? We fucked up, actually. Sorry. Oops. But this guy's still defending the decision. Despite the convenience, also, by the way, of course, they never reported anything to the police. Still, he fears for his life 8 years later. He testified, even though the family had closed down the pupusa business. I wonder why they did that. Despite the convenience of Abrego Garcia's claims now being made 8 years after the fact while facing imminent removal, and despite the lack of corroborating evidence from beyond affidavits from his family. Wait. Okay. So there is corroborating evidence. You just don't like the corroborating evidence that exists. Okay. Cool. The new immigration judge found Abrego Garcia's account credible. Even after his finding, the new immigration judge could not grant Abrego Garcia's asylum claim that was obviously time barred. Ergo, Abrego Garcia does not have legal status in the United States. However, Abrego Garcia was granted a withholding of removal from El Salvador or to El Salvador. That is not a legal right to stay in the United States, only a legal right not to be removed to one specific country. Any third country would be sufficient. A withholding of removal, as far as I understand, I might be wrong on this, I'm not an immigration attorney, has a higher fucking proof. Like it has a higher standard of proof than asylum even, which means if a withholding of removal to El Salvador was granted to him, that requires a higher burden of a higher threshold of proof than fucking an asylum status. What are you saying, Will Chamberlain? So that's the issue. The United States didn't make an administrative error. The removal to him to El Salvador when they were withholding the removal to El Salvador. But that begs the question, could the administration terminate his withholding of removal? Oh my God. But getting back to the matter at hand, J.D. Vance responded to Kyle Cheney, a legal affairs reporter, is apparently unable to or unwilling to look at the facts here. In 2019, an immigration judge under the first Trump administration determined that the deported man was, in fact, a member of MS-13 gang. He also apparently had multiple traffic violations for which he failed to appear in court. A real winner. That is literally not enough to deport someone. You fucking animal. That's the crime. Aside from allegations that were later found to be erroneous, Okay? The crime is failing to appear in traffic court. It is telling that the entire American media is going to run a propaganda operation today, making you think an innocent father of 3 was apprehended by a gulag. Here are the relevant facts. The man is an illegal immigrant with no right to be in our country. An immigration judge determined he was a member of MS-13 gang. He did not. Because he is not a citizen, he does not get a full jury trial by peers. In other words, whatever due process he was entitled to, he received. He edited the original post because he had said that the determination was made under the Biden admin. It had not been. He initially wrote, oh, your own fucking Biden admin actually made this determination. Here it is. Here's the initial post. No, this is not the initial post. Where the fuck's the initial post? God damn it. Yeah, here. Kyle Cheney, illegal in 2019, an immigration judge under the Biden admin determined that the deported man was in fact a MS-13. Yeah, also, you're right. Jay Mershon is right. J.D. Vance is not being a dumb fuck here. He's a Yale-educated lawyer. He is deliberately manufacturing consent. Or, in this case, fucking lying. Okay? He knows exactly what took place here. He's just fucking lying. He's a dumb fuck for saying Biden in 2019, ironically enough. Yeah. This person replying is correct. He is not a convicted MS-13 gang member. That is a fucking lie. But you can do that. You can lie about whoever the fuck you want. Here's how he was even ID'd as a MS-13 gang member in 2019 in the first place. Yeah. Abrego Garcia is not a convicted gang member. He's never been charged or convicted of any crime. The only thing he's done is fail to show up to traffic court, chat. Police accused him of being MS-13 after stopping him and 3 other men for allegedly loitering outside of a Home Depot where he says he'd gone to apply for a job. It was his first time and only time in state custody. Law enforcement separated the men and interrogated them about gang membership. They told Abrego Garcia he could leave if he gave them information, which he said he didn't have. One of the other men pointed the finger at Abrego Garcia and accused him of being affiliated with a gang that operates in New York, which he's never lived in. That, along with the fact that he was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie, is the evidence law enforcement said showed he was in a gang. The standard for evidence for a cop to fucking assume that you are a criminal is already low. The standard of evidence for ICE is just you're fucking brown. That's it. I swear to God, that's it. Everything else is make-believe. Okay? I'm telling you right now, they literally don't care. They're like, oh, you're Mexican. Oh, you're El Salvadoran? Doesn't matter. You're Mexican now. That's literally it. You just look Mexican enough and they will fuck you. Like, cops already do that for black people and brown people in general. This is on steroids, okay? When his lawyer went to find the police report for the Home Depot incident, Abrego Garcia wasn't even named on it. And what about the subsequent gang evaluation? The investigator who authored it was suspended. In late 2019, Abrego Garcia won his case and was granted protected status and was released from custody. He has had no arrest since. Those are the facts. Vance complains a lot about dishonesty and fake news, and here he is spreading an outright lie about someone the administration he's serving in just mistakenly sent to a third world prison without due process, a staggering level of incompetence. He should be deeply embarrassed. But Abrego Garcia was denied bond. That is because the law requires that judges view ICE allegations as inherently trustworthy when the agency submits someone for deportation. Worse, ICE erroneously noted on its form that Abrego Garcia had been arrested as a part of a murder investigation instead of a loitering investigation. Being denied bond does not make you guilty under law. Conservatives used to define themselves with a skepticism towards government, blah, 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 and then the rest of it is because he's a fucking libertarian Reason Magazine lawyer, Reason Magazine writer, so he's just fantasizing about how conservatives used to be. Liberals and libertarians at Reason Magazine fantasize about a conservative movement that never existed and will never exist. But that's besides the point. Everything else is correct. Mind you, they're outflanking this. Yeah, exactly. That's what's so crazy about it is that the administrative apparatus that is responsible for mass deportations unironically came out and said, we actually made a mistake. Holy fuck. These guys are literally just trying to play catch up and defend. They are outflanking ICE. They're saying, yeah, ICE is some woke nonsense, actually. This story is fucking insane. It's insane because it's indicative of the attitude that the administration has demonstrated towards their mass deportation policies. It is insane because it's even happening. It's insane that, what, you got banned again? What do you mean? No, it's insane every step of the way. Are you typing with the screen off and audio off? Yeah.